Welcome to the Driver's Line. I'm Greg.
And I'm Jordan.
And today, we've got a conversation for you.
That's right. Today's conversation is focused on models that were replaced by newer versions of that same model with a different name, different attitude, but were somehow way worse.
Yeah, we're going to call it the revisions that caused division.
That's right. Very catchy.
Yeah, jokes aside, these are cars that automakers dreamed up to say that we're going to replace this historical, popular platform with something new.
Yeah. So, and they ended up just shooting himself in the foot.
Yeah, pretty much just massive failures. Usually these cars died out just a few short years later.
That's right. All right. So we each have two that we picked. So I guess I'll start us off.
All right.
So mine first pick comes from the land of the rising sun.
Oh.
All right. This is a car we haven't really talked about yet, but I think it's a legendary car. Very, very, very on hollow ground, right? And this is the Mazda RX-7. So it's very well known that the Mazda RX-7 drives really well. It represents some of the pinnacle of Mazda engineering in terms of its rotary engine. Love it or hate it. A lot of people looked towards it for that purpose. It's a great handling car. It's very, very popular amongst the automotive enthusiasts who are doing race days, right? And Mazda saw that, and then sometime later they said, you know what? We need to bring back the rotary. And they said, you know, I don't think, though, that we're going to do the two-door coupe thing. We're going to make it a kind of like 2.5-door thingamajig.
Oh, and let's put some seats in the back, too.
Yeah. We'll bump up the number to 8, so we'll call it the RX-8. And although it's maybe not a direct replacement, it is basically following the same lineage of that rotary-powered sports car, right? So instead of going from that 2+2 in a coupe format, we're doing that in a 2.5-door, 4-door situation, but they have that split door in the back. But the thing is worse in like basically every way. The RX-7 had more cargo capacity. Let's just start off with that.
This one had more passenger capacity.
Fine, it gets that one. The RX-8 gets that one. As if anyone's going to sit in the back of RX-8. That's, you know. But
those were like 2 adult seats back there.
Okay. Because that's why we buy sports cars. Now, let's move into the actual reasons that people buy sports cars, okay? The RX-7 was more powerful. 255 horsepower versus 232. The torque number, 217 versus 159.
That's because it was a naturally aspirated rotary.
So what?
There was
two
turbos strapped to the RX-7.
So who's telling you not to put a turbo on RX-8? Nobody.
Fuel economy ratings?
Nope. RX-7 was better in terms of fuel economy. Yes, it was by 1 mile a gallon, but it was.
That is terrible.
And it's lighter. So like, I'm not sure what they were aiming at with the RX-8.
Well, it's lighter because when it crashes, it goes into a tin can. Versus the RX-8 had to have a little bit of modern safety, especially when you're doing those giant door openings. I mean, that's probably had to be like really strong steel.
I'm sure. So I'm not sure why we did that whole setup. I think a 2+2 with 2 regular doors will work. Okay. Yeah. But it just seemed like an odd choice to replace the legendary RX-7 with something that spoke to its name, just went a completely different direction. And, you know, it was around for a little bit, but certainly no one's pining to own one at this point.
Yeah.
So,
Fair. I mean, I like the RX-8. I'm not going to lie. I like the RX-7 better. I mean, if you had 2 of them parked next to each other in the parking lot, 10 times out of 10, I'd hop in the RX-7.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, twin turbo, 2-seat, that classic styling. I love the styling.
Yeah.
You know, the RX-8 was unfortunate to receive Mazda's like revised styling. I forgot what they call it, but you know, they hit it with the NC Miata too. Yeah. And the Miata then started to kind of look kind of fat, even though it was still a lightweight Miata, but it kind of had that like puffed out look with the NC. Yeah. A lot of people that turned them off, you know, went from the svelte styling of like the NB Miata to the NC Miata, and same with the RX-7, RX-8 went from, you know, the FD RX-7 to, I don't even know what they call the RX-8. But I mean, I hate to disparage it just because it is still a wonderful chassis. Yeah. It is still a manual transmission.
True.
And it's the only way you can get a rotary, or could at the time.
It's definitely unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unique. I mean, kudos to Mazda for making it, but it is undeniably a step backwards from the RX-7, which is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, like we should have just called it something else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could have been like Rotary Coupe, RC.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Lexus, we got it first.
Yeah, not really a great successor to the RX-7.
Yeah, no, it could have been something else, but good car. You know, wish they just would have called it something else.
Yeah.
Fair. Cool. Well, my first one is going to be going all the way back to the 1970s, specifically 1978. This is a car that ran for actually quite a long time. It was introduced in 1978, ran all the way through the mid-90s. Because we can't not talk about Porsche on a podcast. This, of course, is a Porsche. And I am talking of the Porsche 928. So this was something that a lot of people think was dreamt up as a replacement for the 911, because Porsche saw the market shifting. They were like, oh, folks are looking more for grand touring cars. They want big engines, so they put in a V8 in there. It's water cooled instead of air cooled. So they saw the market kind of shifting, and so they wanted to come up with a product that met the market, right? They thought, a lot of people think, again, that this is going to be replacing the 911, and it really wasn't ever planned to replace the 911. I still wanted to mention it here because that is still a point of contention. There are a lot of people who think it does, a lot of people think it doesn't. But nevertheless, it did not replace the 911. The 911 is still strong today. The 928 is basically the Panamera now.
That's true.
I mean, it's really the closest analog
right.
to the 928. You know, big front engine, rear all-wheel drive. But again, you know, standing all by itself, the 928 is actually a really good car. It's actually smaller than a modern 911.
Oh, for
A
sure.
little bit bigger than the 911 of the time. But you know, when you think of it, you think of a big car, but it's not. You know, it's a classic 2+2 GT with the classic proportions.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from the classic 911 shape and setup when you've built such a strong reputation around it, and to say, hey, we're going to go in this direction.
Right. This is all of our history, and we're going to go over here. So, I mean, you know, Porsche, I think, knew that wasn't going to work with it. Curacao was never going to fly. So I really think that it wasn't set up necessarily as a replacement, but that mystery is still out there, right?
Well, this is what happens when you put an American CEO in charge of a German car brand, perhaps. I don't know.
Oh, yes, I love big V8s. Let's go do it.
Yeah, I mean, you think you're right. 928 is still a fantastic car. It's a great looking car, too. I think compared to like some of the design choices that were being made at the time, I think it really stands out, but in a good way. But yeah, maybe not exactly what a 911 should be.
No, not at all.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great call out. Absolutely. I'm going to take things stateside for my next choice. All right. And that is the land of Pontiac. It's dead. I know.
It's dead.
We're sad about
So the whole brand.
We're sad about this. But this particular choice I struggled with a little bit because it's kind of a replacement for it. It plays in the same market. And I like the car, but it does not necessarily represent moving the brand forward, which I think Pontiac really needed at the time. So the car I'm referencing is the GTO, specifically the one in the mid-noughts that came out in comparison to its previous 2+2 coupe, and that was the Firebird. Both share that 5.7 V8, obviously updated and retuned in later GTO spec, an additional 20 horsepower in that time. But the styling just did not reflect what the potential of that chassis had. So I think it's a good looking car, but when you're going from the flamboyant, over the top, in my opinion, the better looking of the F-body twins at the time, the Firebird, compared to the Camaro, I mean, you know, I think it is, to the Jelly Bean GTO, which they did end up adjusting it and then killed it off. It just doesn't feel like it moved forward at all. The interior is better, I will say that much, because the F-body interior was, it's tough. But when you're talking about the performance to dollar ratio, the Firebird is the winner without a doubt. And I think that's what Pontiac really is about, is valuable performance. Kind of where Dodge wants to be, you know.
Where Dodge is frankly.
Yeah,
I mean, they really are. They're kind of owning that market right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight you on this one.
Ooh.
Because I disagree. I mean, you're not wrong about the styling. The styling of the GTO was very milquetoast. It was the weakest part of that whole car. But I think it actually would have brought Pontiac forward if they'd actually put some effort into it.
Okay.
So I mean, I guess you could make the argument saying, well, I'm saying what they actually did instead of what they should have done. Yeah. And I'm probably talking about more what they should have done and didn't do. So I mean, that you know, that kind of bears your point out a little bit more thoroughly. But you know, the GTO was a fantastic car, especially once they revised it. You know, with the 05 and 06 models. The 04 was the first one with the 5.7, the flat hood, the single exit exhaust. 05 and 06, they brought the snorkeled hood with the Ram Air on it,
Yep.
the dual exit exhaust, and larger wheel options, just a little bit more aggressive look. Both versions of it still had the wonderful interiors, a really high quality interior, especially for Pontiac at that time. Like absolutely blew anything else
for sure.
they had out of the water. Durability on it wasn't great. You see a lot of them now for sale with stitching, pulling, and just kind of falling apart, which is unfortunate. But at the time, it just had one of the most comfortable seats. It was like a seat out of a Volvo. Like, I mean, just those really nice, comfy, like supportive but cushy seats. It, you know, kind of fit in that GTO ethos as a big engine, kind of a smaller platform. They just really, the biggest two holdbacks were the styling. They should have gone a little further, and the marketing. But I mean, I think the GTO was a fantastic car that just did not see the effort.
I agree with that. I agree 100%. Yeah.
So
I just think it could have gone a step further.
Yeah, they should have taken a step further, and it could have. I mean, it would have changed Pontiac's outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think had they offered maybe a lower cost option of that, and that's tough to do when you're importing it from Australia.
Right.
I mean, you know, when you're not building it stateside, but you're going from a Firebird, which is available at that time under 20s,
right,
to a luxury, basically coupe. I mean, that's basically what you're looking at. It's tough to be a replacement.
Put the 3.6 in there and call it a Le Mans.
Hey. A Le Mans, I like it.
But you know, I mean, yeah, with the 04 or with the 05 and 06, you could get the LS2 in there.
Yeah,
I mean, 400 horsepower was nothing to sneeze at. It was a solid performance car.
Yeah.
Just, you know, hampered. It was a little heavy.
Yes.
But you know, it was really more of a GT than a sports car.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of
Muscle
really
car,
the
right?
space that that it occupied was you know, kind of the classic GTO space, which was cool. So it was nice to see an attempt, at least at a modern iteration.
For sure.
It just, the execution wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Well,
but yeah, good call out.
Sad.
Still fight you, but good call out.
Yeah. We miss Pontiac. What can you say?
Yeah. Anyways, my next one, we're also staying American. So I'm headed over to the Blue Oval.
Okay.
So let's go back to the 80s. All right. Mustang's got the Fox. Ford has the Fox body Mustang, right?
Yep.
It's selling relatively well, but it's, you know, based on that old, you know, rickety Fairmont platform, right? Like, I mean, it just was trundling along. It was the squeakiest, rattlest thing. I did 93, so I can talk. Just very, very like flexible platform, right? Getting very dated. And who's kind of rising up at that point, right? It's all the imports. You're seeing like these imports come, like the Integra, the Celica Supra, are really starting to rise, like the Diamond Star Motor ones, right? You know, the Plymouth Laser and the Eclipse and all of those guys are just really starting to sell in bigger and bigger numbers at late 80s, early 90s. And so Ford is starting to see the writing on the wall. They're like, oh, maybe people don't want a rear-wheel drive rickety platform anymore. You know?
Just think forward thinking here a little bit.
So they're like, maybe we should jump on that bandwagon. So they called up their friends at Mazda, who I think they had an ownership stake in at the time. And they're like, hey, why don't you build us a front-wheel drive sports coupe platform? And Mazda said, you guys write the check, so why not?
Got it.
Yeah. So Mazda comes up with the MX-6, and Ford comes out with the Probe. The Probe was originally planned to be a replacement for the Mustang. This is...
Could you imagine that?
Yeah. This is literally in stone. This was a plan that they made.
Yeah.
But the reaction from all of the Mustang faithful is why they didn't do it. And so they kept it as a separate model, which only made it until...
Good thing they did.
1997.
Wow.
So it only got one revision during its life, and then they killed it.
That's a shame. I mean, it's definitely not a Mustang.
No, it's not a Mustang, but it was still a fun, you know, sports coupe.
It's a good-looking car.
Yeah, and it was a good-looking car at the time. I liked both generations. I thought they were interesting and unique. The name was unfortunate, like Probe.
Yeah.
Like, you could have come up with a much better name.
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah. You know, some of those old tabled Mustang names might have been, you know, useful, but...
Absolutely.
You know, it just it definitely did not replace the Mustang.
No.
And you know, they could have done a little bit better execution with it as like a sports coupe. But again, it was a fun car, and I'm glad that Ford made it, but it just did not fit the bill.
Yeah, no, definitely does not play into the Mustang faithful's realm, right? And I'm not sure it drew in a bunch of import buyers either, so it kind of played the middle ground, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it didn't really offer, you know, like think about the Integra, right? Like you had the Integra Type R, Integra GSR.
Right.
So you had like two different levels of performance variants for the Integra. You could have one that was like, peppy and handled really well with the GSR, and then one that was like a screamer and handled like it was on rails with the Integra Type R. No probe that Ford made touched either one of those.
Yeah.
Like even the GT.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah. It was more of a Grand Tour in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Versus an actual sporty car.
It's like a Prelude.
Yeah, right.
Like a Prelude at the time. It wasn't like something that you kind of really wrung out. It was something that you kind of like bopped around and looked cute in.
There you go.
I'm feeling
cute
today.
in your probe.
Yeah. If Instagram was around, maybe the probe would have made it.
I don't want to talk about probing things on Instagram.
Yeah. Oh. That would have been a different hashtag.
Oh boy, I'm sure it would survive then. Yeah, well, that's a fair point. Certainly glad the Mustang stuck around, though.
Yeah, absolutely. With the S650, S550 that we've had in the last 2 generation Mustang, it's just been outstanding.
Yeah, and now it stands alone. All right, well, we hope you enjoyed our cars that replaced, and we can't remember the title.
The revisions that caused division.
We hope you enjoyed our episode on the cars that had revisions that caused division.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the title.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Thank you so much for watching.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on The Driver's Line.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a thing.